I'll let you know when it fully goes in. It says a
Now,
premium
does it
account on X
automatically
Twitter is
post?
required to create live broadcasts on their platform. Please upgrade to premium subscription on X to something something.
Oh,
So it
you
won't
probably
let
can't
me
live stream on
actually
X. You probably have to have your
remove
blue
X.
check mark on X.
So I saved my changes there. Let's see if that's all right. It acts like it's going live now.
Do I need
I
to
just had to
close out
remove.
X? That's just it's just the countdown up there.
I did have to close X out because I think it had a
Okay,
premium account for that. So
that's
we
fine.
are
I have
officially live.
it's not too expensive. It's like $8.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
we're
it's working.
officially live now. So I'm gonna make
Yeah,
sure the settings
it's
are all
working on
good.
YouTube.
Edit post. It says just friends. Discord. I might have to do it from my cell phone. I wonder if I could do the video editing from here.
You mean to share it on your cell phone?
Yeah.
Okay, I see it on mine.
Yeah, I might have to
I'm
try and do it
sharing
from
it.
my phone.
I'm sharing it on mine. Make sure it works.
All right. I'm gonna try it from my phone instead. Well, if you're joining us, we haven't started the show officially yet. We thought we'd go ahead and make sure everything was working. Yeah, see, it won't let me change my public viewing on Facebook, though.
Well, I mean, it lets me share it though, and I don't know if people can still see it if they're not
Yeah.
friends.
Let's see if I can pop this over.
Wonder what it's
We
causing
got
that
some
to happen.
friends on the YouTube account, too. So I'm going to share that link.
Oh yeah.
Which is, it still works. Like you have to, I mean, I used to have to do it that way where only friends can see it. Now, one thing I noticed is when the show was over last time, it did let me turn around and share it public, but for some reason while I was live streaming, it wasn't letting me do it.
It might be in Facebook settings somewhere.
There you go.
I'm going to share
We're
this.
just might have to give it a couple of minutes here and see if it lets me change my setting again. I got it preset to where everything I post is public because I was hoping that would fix the issue. Unless it lets me do it now. Nope.
Okay, I'm going to share the YouTube link on my Twitter. No, that would probably help too
Yeah.
to do that, because then you can the Twitter people can get on. They can get on YouTube and join that way, which is the way I usually watch Assembly Call and all that anyway.
Yeah. See what the comments thing. Either way, I can still bounce back and forth and look at comments from Facebook.
Yeah, I just tagged you on the X post.
Are you able to see the video on X?
No, I'm taking the YouTube link
Okay.
of the live stream and putting it on there.
I'll try one more time from my cell phone. It actually let me do this one time.
Yeah, when I did the. Lindsay EDC just said good evening.
Yeah, that's my friend Matt. Hey, Matt. Roxanne just commented on it too. She said, hey, guys.
Great, great.
Hi, Rox. Get ready to start the show pretty soon. We're just getting settled in, giving people a chance to kind of roll in so they don't miss anything.
I'll try to pop into the YouTube comments every once in a while and
yeah. I don't say if you want to keep an eye on that too, which I'll try to do the same. I'll keep an eye on the Facebook one. So if you want to reference them, plus the StreamYard chat, which I've seen some people pop up, like a few of them, especially YouTube. So like if people are using the YouTube account, they can see that. I know a good idea. I didn't think about this until Matt had just asked. I can drop the chapters link in the Facebook comments too, if people wanted to chat.
No, does it live stream on? No, it doesn't live stream on Spotify. We have to do that on the back end, I think.
Let me go do that real quick, just so people have the option. So one good way to comment that we can see it on the show without bouncing back and forth is the link that I'll drop in the comments section of Facebook on the Facebook video. So that's like an alternative way to stream the podcast, and you can also comment on there. Either way, we can still keep an ye on this.
Do you mean the
Rob's-
StreamYard link?
No, I dropped the YouTube channel link. Like
Oh my
YouTube
God.
channel links, like for example, you see I had Matt's comment up. He mentioned glad to be here. See, I can see YouTube comments because it is public, but Facebook for
Got
some
it.
reason is only set to friends only. But Roxanne comment on there too. She says she's looking forward to the show. She misses your mama. She said, miss your mama. And we miss her too. We thought this would be a great way to honor her though. Like we have some great questions tonight. I actually also grabbed the poem that I had from the funeral services for mom that I plan on sharing with the. with
Yeah,
all
I don't think
friends.
Roxanne had a chance to hear the poem.
No, I don't
I
think
don't
so.
believe so.
Besides
This might
what
be
I
the
posted
first
on
time.
Facebook. Tanya hatefully, she just said, "Hey Ben and Robbie, a wonderful devoted mama." Tanya's our kindergarten teacher. This is nice to have her in here as well. But yeah, none of you guys have missed anything yet. For those that have just joined us, we're just kind of getting settled in. We went live again, just being my second show I've done. We're still figuring out the technology side of things, getting back in the saddle. We're streaming on Facebook right now. We're streaming on YouTube. On my YouTube account, I did drop the link in the comments section if you guys want to follow.
Hey
over
Ben,
there.
I found the problem on how to fix Facebook.
Yeah, what's that?
So hey, go on your Facebook on your computer. Do you have it loaded up?
Yeah.
Okay, so go up on your Facebook. Go to your top right on where your icon on your face is. And
Yeah.
go to settings and privacy.
Yeah. There's a couple. There's like a privacy center.
No. Above that, you want to just click on settings, I believe. Yep.
Oh, there's comment privacy settings.
Now on the left side, you should see under a category called Tools and Resources, there's a little gearbox logo and it says Default Audience Settings. Make sure you're in the right category. You want to click on your picture and click on Settings and Privacy, and then just click on Settings, not the Privacy Center.
Default audience settings. I see it.
Yeah, and then that's where you switch it to public. More than likely, your default's on Friends.
Yeah, I was on Friends.
Yeah, so if you do that, and that's to say, I don't know if we should, it probably automatically fixes it.
Probably, we'll see. We'll go back to the profile.
I need to fix mine too because I'll stream later.
That would be great. Then we'd be
No,
able
we
to
don't have
see
to
what's
restart
on
the
us.
stream again. But now we figured out that problem. So it's not StreamYard, it's our Facebook.
Yeah, it's not letting me change the setting.
What we could do is we could just let this episode go. You can change the setting on the back end. Do you mean change the setting in the settings where you just let me do it, or is it because you're streaming right now?
Well, it might be because I already started it.
No,
And then I won't be
and let
able
me
to do
change
it,
mine. But I'm not.
Well,
Also
it let me
on
change the
streaming.
setting. It just won't let me go back and edit the setting on the
Oh,
video
yeah,
that
yeah.
we're already live on.
Yeah.
It's
We
only
would have to
letting me
restart
do-
this chat, but I don't want to restart with us sharing the link already to everybody. We don't want to
Yeah.
restart the.
It's all good. I could just reference back and forth from the two. Like I said, we got the kind of the YouTube side going
That's okay.
too, so I can see comments in there. All right, I'm gonna head back over to the other side.
I think we're about ready to go.
Yeah. So again, everybody that just might be hopping in, we appreciate you joining us tonight. And we're going to be doing an episode around honoring mom's memory. The twin brothers joining us, so you haven't actually missed the full start of the show yet. We were just kind of getting settled in and making sure everything was running smoothly on Facebook and YouTube and X that we're operating. I wasn't able to do TikTok yet because it's make me jump through a few hoops to figure that out. So me and Robbie's got to dive into that later to see what's going on there. But yeah, just to give a little bit of an explanation before we get started is when we go into the intro music of the I'll probably do a little bit of a brief introduction. I do kind of a little bit have of a script in the beginning that Robbie and I would go through. The main purpose of doing that is just because being more of a sensitive episode about mom, him and I are also doing the best we can to keep our emotions in check too, because we really want to make it meaningful and count. I don't think everybody wants to see us break down, but we have a great show planned. We have tons of questions we have. Of course, we're open to any of the questions or comments you guys want to provide on here as well. But again, we've already seen we got friends on Facebook and also on YouTube, like friend Matt Finley. He commented and said, good evening. Becky Peters said, hi, Ben and Robbie. I sure do miss seeing your mom. Of course, Tanya and Roxanne and messages below too. So feel free to, we got this going on here now too. I don't know if they'll let you guys do, but if you guys get a chance to share the live stream, that'd be awesome. Maybe it lets other people that might not be direct friends with me be able to access that, since I did switch it over to public here recently. But other than that, Robbie, if you're good to go, I'll go ahead and fire it up.
I'm good.
All right. Welcome back to Chapters, Conversations That Matter. Tonight's episode is a special one. I'm going to be honoring Mom's memory. Tonight, I also got my twin brother, Robbie, joining us. Robbie, how's it going?
It's going great. I'm just glad to be back on Chapters. Like we talked a couple of weeks ago, I was just excited that we have another Malcolmson voice back in the podcasting world again since 2022. I think me and you were mind blown that it had already been 3 years since we did Hoosier Heartland or Chapters. So I'm very blessed to be here with you, but also just to see you back into podcasting again. I'm very happy about that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It feels good to be back, and I owe you a huge thanks for that, for you getting back into yourself, and it inspired me to kind of break out of that mode and get back in the saddle. And you had this idea of doing this episode on Mom, which, you know, she had passed away a couple of months ago, a little over a couple of months ago now. And you and I still going through the motions and processing her passing and all that. We thought this was a really good way to honor her, and it helps us process that as well. So without further ado, we're going to go right into the opening. So on top of that, my twin brother, Robbie, and I wanted to take this time to honor the memory of our mother. She was the heart of our family, the steady presence in our lives, and the kind of woman whose impact reaches far beyond words.
She raised us with love, but also with strength. She taught us lessons that we're still learning today. And even in her passing, she continues to shape who we are as men, as brothers, and as family.
This conversation isn't just about remembering her life. It's about sharing the legacy she left behind, the lessons she taught us, and the way her spirit continues to live on. We hope that in listening, you'll think about the people who shaped your own life and maybe even carry forward in some of what Mom gave us.
So let's start at the beginning, Ben, with those earliest memories that still bring her close to us.
Yeah, so that's the first question we want to share with the show tonight is, what's one of the earliest memories of Mom that still shapes how you see the world today? And Robbie, if you don't mind, I'll go ahead and get started on that one. I kind of want to get our responses both. For me,
when I was looking at
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I thought you wanted me to go ahead.
No, go ahead. Have at it, man. You're ready.
Well, I wouldn't say I'm ready. I looked at this question and I was like, man, that's actually a difficult one to do, because if anybody remembers what me and you were like as little kids, we were like little hellions. There's a lot of stories that we could not even probably legally share on a live stream. But some of those earlier memories, other than like probably getting justifiably whipped in public a few times there and just driving Mom up a wall. I think, and this is something you have to help me with names, Ben, because I've always told you I'm notoriously bad with names, but I have a very good visual memory. And there's a couple of events, but one specifically I still remember whenever we were kids. I don't know if you remember the elderly woman that used to live across the street next to Gloria. I want to say her name is Retta. Is that what her name was?
Yeah, I'm having trouble remembering.
Okay, so I think she was probably at least in her 80s, but I think somebody on the live stream might remember who it was. I'll just never forget one of the early moments that I saw where Mom's compassion really extended beyond our household. Was I was never forget when Mom would go and get groceries for her or take her to get her hair cut. And I remember as a little spoiled kid, I remember thinking, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? Like, this is impeding on my fun time. What's happening with this stuff here? Of course, we're too dumb and ignorant and young to realize what's really going on. But it wasn't just that. It was also like helping people at the Golden Years apartments in town by the high school, like Ruby and them. And I just remember like our whole childhood, all the way up through we were high school, mom just kind of always did that. And she never like sought praise about it. If social media would have been around, I would have been shocked if mom would have ever bragged about anything like that. Much less even being comfortable touching anything electronic. She would have panicked on that. But for me, that's one of the earliest memories is just seeing how compassionate she was to other people. She always, and some would say probably to a fault. I think the people had known her to in a great way, but to a fault. Mom put the needs of others before herself, and I think most of the time it was very, very good. And then sometimes I think it might have made her even more anxious and stressed out. But that to me is something that is one of the earliest memories that sticks with me. What about yourself?
You know, as I went through this whole show plan, and I think this is going to come up multiple times, which, by the way, you shared some great memories there overall with mom. But there's a lot of foundational traits that stuck out to mom that ties right into her memories. And some of the biggest one is, what the pride that mom had, with our home and also wherever she was living, especially for cleaning houses. She cleaned houses for years over there. And it made me things that stuck to me was like her teaching, she cleaned around our house, but she cleaned for like Bob Miller and Green Meadows and multiple other people. And she always did it with a big smile on her face. And she seemed like she loved it. A lot of people probably hate doing chores, but it made me think back how, how did I learn to, well, hi, Letha. How did I learn to like use a vacuum to do the dishes, things of that nature, take out the trash. And I think in a lot of ways, mom was teaching us how to take care of ourselves in our own homes in the future. So looking back on it, I really felt like mom gave me a sense of structure early on.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that a lot of it was going back to, I don't think that you and I were consciously realizing it. It's something that I think you definitely realize later. Like in retrospect, you see all these little moments that added up to us being much better. And some of us being more mature. And there's
Come to say hi. Okay.
Oh man, but no, man, I completely agree with you. Like I said, I do remember like her cleaning houses, and I know she was trying. Her and Dad were trying to do the best they could at keeping food on the table and giving us a good life on that. And I really think that it sounds kind of cheesy, but I think a lot of people that listen to this podcast or in the chat probably remember an iconic movie called Sandlot, and that even though it's based in like the 1950s or so like that, I feel like me and you in our friend group, for the most part, had that kind of life. Like we were one of the last generations that kind of. This is not a boomer thing to say that we're better than the other generation. I'm just saying we do know what it was like before cell phones, but we also know what it's like after phones. And I do remember like our house, thanks to mom and dad, our house became like the welcoming place for all of our friends. Like the bicycles were all in front of our yard. We would play baseball, wrestling, basketball, all kinds of stuff like that. So I felt like in many ways, me and you got the lucky enough to get like the typical Sandlot kind of childhood, and a lot of kids don't really get that. And even though we didn't have much money, we still just definitely had enough to get by well. We had, more importantly, you and I had very supportive parents and very present, and I consider myself very lucky for that. I think you would agree.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Just going on to the next question here was there a moment growing up when you realized how much strength she carried, even if she didn't always show it? What was your response on that one?
See, the growing up part is a little bit harder to do. I know that she's dealt with a lot of hardship. I will say the earliest memory is probably when she was taking care of her mother. Like me and you do not have a strong memory of her mom, but I do vividly remember her in the nursing home or the hospital. And she was already battling with, I believe, dementia. I know mom's best friend, Pat, could probably clarify that better. But I remember mom's resiliency helping to take care of her mother. And maybe in a way, mom saw her father and her mother and a lot of elderly people that she would be helping. And that might have been another reason of many why whenever she became older, she was just 78 here when she passed away, about to be 79. She didn't even like to receive a lot of help from other people. She always enjoyed being the one helping other people. And so that's one of my earliest ones, is taking care of her mother. I would say later on, and I know we'll get to this later too, is I strongly realized that when we were older, like seeing your husband die in 2006, by choice, never remarrying, never dating again. Although me, you, and John met, told her within 3 to 6 months later, we were like, if you ever want to do this again, we fully support you. But mom's loyalty always just transcended upon any kind of years. Her and dad both felt like that towards each other. I always admired that strongly. But then also like to see your son almost pass away once from an aortic dissection, and then for him to recover, kind of get back on his feet again and go through hardship, and then he has a stroke and becomes debilitated. And then mom is visiting him, I think, every day for over a year until he had a brain hemorrhage. As many of you know, from in 2019 he passed. So this is something that many of the listeners might be able to empathize with. Sadly, is I can't imagine being a parent and losing your child, and much less losing your spouse. Mom did both of them. Mom coped with losing both of them. And I think mom always had a fear that something was going to happen to us. And as dark as it is, this is just part of the grieving process. Me and you talked about one day is that at least mom doesn't have to deal with potentially seeing either me or you pass away and she's still alive. At least that brings us some solace on that. Sorry, that's a longer answer on that. But for me, it was more of one older memory and then one relatively current memory just to show mom's strength, because I think it goes to her resilience level. And she still felt it. She wasn't stoic. She felt it and she had tears justifiably, but she kept going. That's the biggest point about mom. She would get up every day and go, even if she didn't feel like doing it. And I think that's something as just human beings in general, we can take from and apply that with our own life.
Yeah. And my response to that question is very similar to yours. I focus heavily on the adulthood side. Obviously there's a lot of memories growing up. It's hard to pinpoint a particular moment, but just focused on dad's passing and then mom losing her oldest son and John Matt. I think there was moments where mom really showed her strength through that whole process, because I think it took everything she had. I think she kept going really for us. To me, that had to take a tremendous amount of strength. There was actually a comment I wanted to reference on here too, even though I can't pop it up on the string until probably next show, is Roxanne Simpson, who was always a very close friend of mom's. Of course, her son and me and her son, Zach Simpson, have been best friends since we were kids. Roxanne made a comment saying, I remember your mom putting her whole heart into making Candleton beautiful. She said planting flowers and the museums. She had so much pride in that woman. Would you agree?
Absolutely. That was something I was going to save for later, but that's a vivid memory I have, because mom, I think, did have a reputation from people around town as being a complainer, like the town complainer and whatnot. But I will give mom credit on this kind of stuff too. She did do it out of love. Like, she would get frustrated about the condition that the town was becoming. But unlike a lot of people, including myself, by the way, when I say this, some of us will complain, but we don't really do anything about it. And you have people like mom, I felt like, did take steps, like Roxanne said. I do remember her. And what was it? Was it Gilda Hafley? I think it was her whenever she was still alive. I think her and mom and a bunch of others were working on the courthouse to turn it into a museum. And they had a big part of that first transition over there. And they worked so incredibly hard at repainting, moving things in, calling people. I mean, just the logistics of communication alone. Mom would also take care of the majority of the organization for like Dogwood festivals and all those other festivals in Canton. Remember, Ben, she used to have that notebook full of names and booths and phone numbers, and she'd be on that dial-up cord phone that's all tangled up and shit on there. She'd be on that for hours trying to work on people. So I felt like mom was like one of those people that the way her drive was, she needed to work for like a political campaign, because she was that kind of a drive. She was definitely a go-getter. And hey, to add to that, I'm going to tell a little secret. I don't know if Julie Huber would be okay with this, but she told me and you a story that we didn't know about, but I think the podcast listeners would like this, the ones that knew mom well, to show what mom was really like. She became frustrated with Counting, but Julie told me one of the last conversations she had with mom, which was just literally weeks before she fell. It might have been in June sometime, when mom came in again to check on the insurance stuff to see if it was okay. She told Julie that she wanted to move back to Candleton. And that was something that surprised me and you. She never told me and you that. But she said, like, deep down, I wish I could go back there again. And it just shows you that deep down, mom loved that town. And I think she loved what it represented. It was dad's hometown. It became mom's home. Although, she was from Lamar in the Dale area. But I think for her, Candleton was home. And yet another reason of many that I'm glad that she and Dad are buried in Calton together up on the hill.
Yeah. I think it segues into our next question, Robbie. That's very well. It says, what values or lessons from Mom do you find yourself leaning on most now in adulthood? What would you say?
I'd say compassion. Mom, especially for me, I'm sure you can talk about this in your career from your point of view. From the industrial side, I'll say from the teaching and education side, after teaching for 17 years now, I would say definitely Mom's compassion towards people that were different than her. All parents say embarrassing things and have things that are outdated that they might think or believe, but it's one of those things that, her maiden name was Brockman. What was her before Malcolmson? But yeah, for me, Ben, I think it's compassion because it's truly made me slow down a lot more and think I really need to be compassionate in a job that you deal with people's personalities every day of over sometimes 140 or 150. I probably come in contact with at least 200 people every day that I have a chance to partially influence their day on. So that's really stuck with me as a trait for Mom. And that's also happens to be a stoic trait too that I also follow. What about you, Ben?
Yeah, I don't know if it classifies in the same like values or lessons, but when I really thought about Mom, her and Dad were really in the same realm for me. Was Mom and Dad both shared something together, and that was just about them being present. And to me, whether it's in work or in life, you may not always have the right answer or know exactly what to say, but it starts with being there for each other, and that's how Mom and Dad both were. They shared that, and I think you and I both got that from Mom as well. But yeah, just to continue on, Robbie. So the next question that I have on here is, if you had to choose one quote, phrase, or saying of hers that sticks with you, what would it be?
Well, there's two of them, and I think both of them end up in the poem at the end. But I tried really hard, but these are just the two that she would say the most. And anybody who knew Mom, especially rode in a car with her, that she would say, drive it, park it, or paint it red if somebody was not going fast enough or if they pulled out in front of her and going too slow. And then she said this to me and you and our friends many times back in the day with sports and how unsuccessful we were when it come to wins or playing competitively. So she would say that you couldn't beat yourselves out of a wet paper bag. And me and you, when we got older, we'd be like, what is this paper bag that we are in? What's this metaphorical 6'8" bag that we had to fight in? So just these kind of sayings that Mom had as isms that I'm sure she either conjured up herself or got from somebody along the line of her life. But those are just two that I look back now, I would give anything to hear her voice say those things again.
Yeah, I think my quote or phrase from Mom, it pushes the PG-13 realm, I think, but I thought you'd get a kick out. I actually had to look up this today to think, okay, I remember the moment, but how old exactly would I have been back at this time frame? But if you remember us going as kids, there's many times where we kind of had somewhat of a movie night when we were kids, and this is one of the memories that came up later on when Mom was in the hospital and under hospice care, and I was talking about, and I bring this up in the poem too, where I still remember as a child in one of my earliest memories falling asleep on her chest, and I could feel her running her hands through my hair. But I remember one of my later memories from that, I want to say I was around 6, 7, most likely 6 years old. And if you remember the movie Roadhouse, that was one of the movies that Mom loved. If it wasn't, and I think it was more of Patrick Swayze because Mom just found him so attractive. Of course, we didn't really fully understand what all that meant. But if you remember, Mom used to.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Dad would kind of like lower his head in like embarrassment. Of course, we had to ask why Mom's doing that. And Mom just describes Patrick Swayze as he's built like a brick shithouse. Yeah. And that was a quote that always stuck with me from Mom. And even though I still didn't know at the time, I remember going to bed that night and thinking, I know it's not a negative thing. Like it's not an insult. So I guess I'm just hoping that I hope I have a shitter someday that's made out of bricks. That way, because it's apparently a good thing. But I don't know, that always stuck with me because Mom used to say that about Patrick Swayze or Steven Seagal. But she's like, look at them, they never break a sweat. She went with the TV. I just want to reference a couple of comments, though, to Tracy Stranger. She mentioned Hey Fellers on Facebook. Hi, Tracy. Thanks for joining us. She actually works out at Master Brand now. She knows her family very well. She actually told me a very heartfelt story about Mom. Tracy, if you're still with us, please feel free to drop that in the comments. I'd love to share that story about how Mom treated your mom in the high rise. Mary Goffin, she actually commented and said, "You were blessed with the best. She only had the best of intentions in whatever she endeavored in." And then Nathan Odd, he just commented bone jamming. He just wanted me to say that, probably more than anything. But Roxanne, she said, "Did you ever notice when your mom and dad were in the car that your mom always had her hand on your dad's lap? I thought now that was love. They really loved each other." It was either that or she was just scared to death of dad's driving. But I thought dad's drive was pretty solid.
Yeah, he was a good driver. Mom just was petrified of any kind of driving.
Yeah, that's true. Now, on the next question on this one, too, I thought this is one of my favorite questions because it ties back to the selflessness you spoke of, Robbie, earlier. But how do you think Mom's kindness and compassion extended beyond our family into the community?
Well, I'm going to try to bring up something. I hope not to take it from you. I've mentioned like helping out elderly people with like shopping and getting them what they need and driving them to get their haircut. Like that's great. I mentioned the courthouse museum. Also, those festivals, like helping to install those bricks in the sidewalk. Remember when the sidewalks were redone and they had all the historic kind of stuff? I do remember me and you and Dad and all of us joining together to help with those groups on there too. So I think that the only one I haven't mentioned yet that it means a lot to her that I think is strongly part of the community is church. And I think that you can agree she loved her church. She absolutely loved Pastor Ann. She loved all the pastors that came before them, but it wasn't just that she cared about being a Methodist necessarily, but it wasn't like she had a favorite denomination, but it was the people. The people at that church were amazing, and I know they loved her to death. And she really, the Methodist Church in Compton meant a lot to her. You know, she would go there and clean. They paid her for that. She would always worry about, you know, the basement flooding all the time, and she'd be calling like Steve Seibert and all them all the time about that. She would tell me at least once a month about the records. And that's another thing I appreciate about Mom is I used to attribute my love for history to just mainly Dad. But looking back, I didn't realize, I think Mom was a lover of history too. You know, she really admired those record books and looking at people. Like during the Great Depression, people were still donating a couple of dollars or something like that. And I thought, what an interesting point to make on that too. And to her, those kind of things, like preserving the past was very important for Mom. And I think, and I'm going to bring this up later when we get to number 7, is that I think legacy, Mom would not probably use that word, but I think legacy meant a lot to Mom, and so did loyalty. And I think that she felt that compassion for her church strongly. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, the historic Candleton Society, the Dogwood Festivals, the Courthouse Museum come to mind. You brought up the church. I mentioned this later on as well. But when you really think about moms, like we had mentioned earlier, even though Mom didn't grow up in Candleton, but because she loved Dad and they built a life there and a family there, Candleton really became a part of her fiber of her being. You know, she didn't do these things either, again, back to her selflessness. All these things she did within the community, she didn't do it for her own notoriety. She just did it because she wanted to give back. You know, she wanted future generations to have fond memories, you know, within the town, for others to take pride in their community. That's one of the things that was, you know, like people complain. You can, there's a fine line between bitching and showing passion. You want to say, I think Mom probably dabbled that line, but really it was her passion breathing out. I think she just wanted people to take pride in their community and in the town's history. And like you mentioned, Mom, you're right. Mom was big on history too, but I think it was like local lore and local history and history within the church was very, very important to Mom. I think that's what stood out to me the most. So
I think,
Robbie, go ahead.
To express something Mom would agree with, I think Mom wanted the community, including me and you, as she would probably say, to get off of our asses and do something like about what we're doing. That's probably exactly how she would have put it as well too. So to me, I think that you summed it up really well there for Mom. The historic Compton part really meant a lot to Mom. And I know that the Heritage Festival and the people that go behind it now do a wonderful job. I think Mom would be really proud of those people.
Yeah, I 100% agree. So on the next question, it says, what's an example of her sacrifice or selflessness that you didn't fully appreciate until later in life?
I've been thinking about this one a lot. I'm going to have you go first on this one, Ben, because I've been going first on all these. I'd love to know kind of what you think here, and then I'll kind of build off of you.
Well, the time she would give to those she loved is, it could be a conversation that you would have over the phone to being there for us. Or, for example, we were not those most successful in sports back in school. As you can remember, we didn't have a lot of success there, but mom and dad were always there at home games or on the road. I remember them
Good
taking
point.
people in the community with them that weren't as fortunate. They either weren't able to drive because they were handicapped or for some other reason, but mom and dad would have people carpool with them. And I just imagine being on that side, like it couldn't have been super enjoyable to watch us get beat in so many
No.
different games. And as you could think, there's still a choice there that they can have for like mom, and that could be like, I'm not going to go watch that. I'm not going to go see that, but they would still be there more than anything. And I think that's what stands out to me the most is what I ask myself, even from this day, how much more difficult those losses would have been without our parents being there for us. Like they might not have been in the van on the way there, on the van on the way home, but when we got home, mom or dad would talk to us about them. We would just know they were there. So I imagine if they were opposite of that and they just chose not to be there because they felt like they already knew the outcome and it just wasn't worth their time, that probably would have painted a different picture. But to me, that's an example of sacrifice, and that's an example of selflessness, that she put her love for us in front of, like, she wasn't even a big sports person. I mean, to be honest with you. So
she didn't like sports
that
at all.
in general was not intriguing to her, but she was there for us. So
Yeah, but you would
be your
never
thoughts?
guess though at the basketball games, she'd be like the loudest parent yelling at the games, dropping some vocabulary that probably should have been said at high school or even middle school basketball games. But no, you're right. I think that I want to echo what you had said. It's her time sacrifice that I really appreciate when I got older. And I think I'm going to appreciate it even more as Siler, my daughter, gets older and she gets more involved in school functions. Let's just say if she joins the band, like Letha would love for her to do someday, she starts to compete in that competitively, if she plays basketball or does any kind of thing competitively. Letha and I will be highly involved in that. And we'll see from that parent side. But it's like you said, Ben, it's not only sacrificing their time, but being able to help out other people that wanted to be a part of that. And they just maybe not have been able to for multiple reasons. And they would take people along. And I do want to share something. I hope that Aunt Judy won't get mad at me for this. I think this is a very honorable story to combine dad and mom. Is I think a good way to honor mom tonight is to include dad with her. But I remember after dad passed years ago, and this was before mom got sick, Judy had told me and you a private conversation she had with dad weeks before he declined stronger. And no, I'm sorry, no, this was a conversation, right before me and you were born. So, John Mann had gone through some struggles and understandably, like he had to recover from a lot of that. I think before me and you were born, dad had told Judy, his sister, our aunt, that he was going to make sure that he was very, very present because he felt, I think to an extent, dad felt like part of John Mann's struggles when he was younger might have been because he or they might not have been as present as they wanted to be. And I think that he tried really hard, him and mom both, to be there for us. And it's like you said, I think that builds off of the time aspect so much, is that both of them wanted to just be present. And that's my thing is, like, looking back, it's not about being wealthy or rich at all. I mean, sure, we all would like to be comfortable, not stress over bills and whatnot, but you can't really replace having a very present and supportive parent. Because a lot of the friends that me and you have or had, who sadly, because some of them have passed away, students that I have had or people that work with you've worked with before, have not been lucky enough to have parents that have been supportive or present. So I think that's one of the things that have made me and you the wealthiest and the most spoiled in the best way possible, is that we've been lucky enough to have our parents be there for us the majority of the time.
Yeah. Very well summed up, Robbie. Just to go on to the next question, and again, I'll start as well, just to keep kind of mixing it up a little bit, is in what ways do you see mom's spirit living on in us today? So I had to really think about this one a lot, but what comes back to me there's multiple words that just keep popping up during this, but again, I feel like I have a very high level of selflessness myself. I feel like when we were raised to put others before ourselves, I think we've got that a lot from mom and dad's verbals and nonverbals through their actions as well. So, for example, even caring for others, I tend to take more on to limit or reduce the stress they have on them in a way to try and help. I think about other feelings before I do my own, and that can really be a blessing and a curse. I think you would probably agree on that you kind of like get in this position where you give, and that's just kind of part of my feeling on it. So that's why it comes back to my mind where it's more of a blessing and a curse. But I definitely feel like whenever I have those instinctive moments like that, I feel like that is a way of mom's spirit living on through us today.
Yeah, I agree. I especially feel like I sense it with my daughter. Like I feel like in some way or another, mom is around and still. There's been even days where I thought, is my mom playing with Sila right now? Because like Sila will be crawling on the floor, laughing like she's running from somebody and looking, and there's nobody there. I'm like, maybe it's grandma or something like that. But it's one of those things for me. I think it shows mostly in our actions. And I told you before the podcast when we were talking about this weeks ago, it's not just because I'm a history lover that I think this way, but I do consider legacy and the ripple effect very important. And I feel like a lot of people that were close to mom would agree that mom's legacy of her life will have a strong ripple effect in a good way. Like her impact and her sense of sacrifice has extended out to a whole bunch of us. It translates over to your job, our family, all these kind of things. So I feel it in my actions every day. It kind of goes back to the compassionate thing I mentioned before and being able to be more resilient. For example, there's been times where I wanted to give up before, but I thought, mom and dad went through harder things than I've gone through, and they were resilient and kept going. So for me, you and I, like I said, we're dealing with our grief, and part of the reason we're doing this episode, it helps me and you kind of cope therapeutically with mom's loss, because I think people should know, she only passed away on July 14th, just a couple of months ago, and for me, I still think I'm dealing with that. So, and sometimes the ripple effect could still be there. Ben, I haven't told you this story yet because I wanted you to get like a genuine, organic reaction to it. So unfortunately, last week, one of Letha's family members passed away that was close on her, I think it's her mom's side or Benny's side. But we were at the funeral home in Lewisburg. And, I've gone to one funeral since mom. I had a former student that I was close to committed suicide back in, I think, August. So I think I had a lot of sort of trauma there that's built up inside that I wasn't really sure would hit me. So we were sitting in the funeral home, but the funeral was about to start, and I'm holding Siler, and all of a sudden I can feel myself getting like real sweaty, short of breath. I had to stand up and tell Letha I got to go outside and just get some fresh air. I took Siler outside, started walking with her, and then I started feeling better. And I told Letha, I was like, I hate to say this because I feel kind of weak for saying this, but I don't think I can be here. Like I said, I don't think I'm really ready to sit in a funeral home yet. And I don't mean that to be disrespectful to your family. And then I think Letha's family was very understandable for obvious reasons about it. But it just shows you right there, Ben, like her spirit, she would never want me to feel that grief and to have almost like a panic attack sort of feeling that I'm not used to feeling. But that just shows you the effect that her loss still has. That me and you can sit here and talk about it, but it doesn't just mean that me and you are like, yeah, we're good. Like it's okay now. Because there's days already where you and I both said, like I would get off school. We usually would talk on the phone after I got off of school, and I feel this inclination to want to call mom and see how she's doing, and I can't call her anymore. I'm lucky enough to have video of mom from you and others that has her voice in it, because one of my fears was losing the memory of mom's voice, because you and I, for the first time in our life, have to go through our life knowing now what it feels like not to have a parent. And you and I have never done that before. And some of our listeners may have that already, and hopefully they don't have to do that for a long time. But it's a harsh reality. And I think that for the most part, though, there are more good days than bad. And the legacy and ripple effect is great. It's amazing. I really think my outspokenness and my compassion, as much as I used to attribute it to dad, it's just as much attributed to mom.
Yeah, very well said, Robbie. On to the next question that we have on here is, how do you hope others will remember her influence, not just as our mother, but as the person she was? I'll let you go this time.
I'll be shorter this time, which I know is not usually in my vocabulary, but for me, it's like I'm going to use a word that usually has a negative connotation, but I think it could be taken positively, and that is stubbornness. I wish people would take mom's stubbornness a little bit forward and kind of apply that in a way that keeps them resilient and keeps them going through times that are very challenging, which they're going to be. And other than that, remembering mom's compassion for others and not remembering her as just a complainer, like people that casually knew her, like, oh, she complains a lot, that kind of thing. But once you get to really know somebody, there's deeper reasons why they feel certain ways. And that was never indicative in a negative way of her love that she had for the people around her and for the community.
Yeah, I think mine kind of ties back to the same answer. Like many recall her never being afraid to tell how it was, or her unfiltered nature, especially when that Mama Malcolmson temper would flare out. And I really do hope others remember for the kind actions that she did. I mean, earlier I mentioned the things she did for the town of County. Mom really cared about people. I mean, whether they were a member of the church or a member of the community, she would help those that were suffering. And I hope she was remembered for all the little kind acts that she did for others over the years. In saying that, there was a few comments I wanted to listen. Unfortunately, I kind of missed Roxanne's. Roxanne had brought up about driving to away games and sports. Like Roxanne was one of them that would drive with Mom and them quite often, and she was very appreciative of Mom and Dad doing that. Karen Herzog, who was one of our neighbors down the street, she commented and said, "I remember the day you guys were born." She said it was a pretty special thing to happen at Perry County Memorial Hospital. Brenda Martin, she commented and said, "Some people come into our lives and immediately that it is easy to carry on a conversation with them. A direct link for me is the ease in which I could talk with your mom and both of you." And then Mary Lucille, she said, your mom pushed people to do better. Women often get labeled as complaining, etc. It's not. It's an expectation for better. Very well said on that. I love that perspective on that. Just to continue on too, and this is one of the tougher questions, Rob. I'll give it a shot on the first go here and see if I don't get choked up during this one. But one of the harder questions for me is what has losing her taught you about resilience, love, and family? And honestly, before I even comment on this, I have to really acknowledge our family on this, because death, I know death is a part of life, but one of the things through grieving processes like that, whether it was Dad's passing or John Matt's or Mom's, was Mike and Judy Melton, and our cousins and stuff. They were always there to rally around us, and they still do to this day. Like, I can't thank, especially my Aunt Judy. She was right there, like driving back and forth from Louisville with me constantly, especially when John Matt was in the hospital going through that. And her and I have had a lot of heart-to-heart conversations on the phone. She's extremely the rock of the family. But to have the support that they had with us with Mom's passing helped me and you process that. And I think we were able to focus more on the celebration of life aspect than we was the fact that Mom was not physically here anymore. So again, the question that I was asking us was, what has losing her taught you about resilience, love, and family? For me, I felt this was a tough one to answer, but I feel that the answer is broad. I mean, as simple as I can say it, death is a part of life as well as grieving. But there is a difference between grieving and suffering. Dad would have never wanted us to suffer with his passing. John Matt never would have wanted us to suffer. And Mom sure as hell never want us to suffer as well. Obviously, we want to mourn their losses, but they wouldn't want this situations break us and not be able to move forward. I mean, so we were able to grieve as a family and come closer together. It reminded me how important that moment is, like whether it's a hangout or a conversation with the person or over text. And this could be family or friend. I've caught myself saying these same things to those I care about who have experienced the same or similar experience with a parent passing away recently. Robbie is like, they're having a difficult time, and some of them are handling better than others. But the ones that are really struggling, the thing that keeps popping in my head, and maybe it's the empath side of me too, is just I know their loved ones wouldn't wish this on them. They wouldn't want them to suffer at this crippling stage that they are. And that's what I come back to more than anything, is that there is a certain level of resilience there, and the love comes out and shows you the strength of family that you are able to keep going. I mean, you're not going to be the same person you are. Obviously, there's a piece of us missing, losing Mom, but we do keep going in a way for them, in a way to honor them. Would you agree?
I completely agree. And I think this is the whole reason why me and you are doing this publicly is not only to honor Mom's memory, but, there is an audience here, and we do want hopefully messages to transcend to other people and maybe mean something to them, especially if they're dealing with their own grief or loss or pending loss or something like that right now. I want to add, because I completely agree with your answer, I just want to add, instead of breaking down each one, because I originally was going to tackle this with each of the three words: resiliency, love, and family. But I'm just going to combine all those together. For me, it has taught me about how important togetherness is. Like you said, with Judy and Mike and the whole family being very supportive, and our friends, we could go years without seeing these people on a regular basis, and people were to show up out of the woodwork for you and have your back right there, like you had never stopped, like spending time together. And it has reminded me the lesson that life is not meant to be lived alone. And I think that this is something that's tough because one of our listeners might be going through this right now. To go through the trials and tribulations of life alone is very difficult. So to go through those challenges with someone or with others makes the suffering a lot more manageable to cope. I was careful not to say the word easier because it's never easy. I think you would agree. But being able to share not only happiness and love, but grief together is extremely therapeutic. And I think that has helped me and you a lot, is that a lot of the goodbyes that people had with mom, and then me and you opening up to her, being there by her side for many days, it kind of gave me some closure there towards the end. And then other than that, I want to add that what the other last thing that has taught me about her loss is religion. As I told you, that I have not been a religious person per se since Dad passed away when we were about 20 or 21. And me and you had, and I'm not going to share this on the podcast, but I'd be more than happy to tell anybody in a private conversation later. But I think me and you had a religious experience, or at least a spiritual one, the moment Mom died. I think that you would agree, right? You and I talked about this, but we haven't discussed 100%. This since it happened. Me and you haven't been avoiding it, but we haven't ever talked about it again. And I've told some of my closest friends that I started attending a Bible study at school. I have some close friends that are helping me out. And I feel like I'm getting closer to God every day, but it doesn't mean I don't have my still skepticisms and my worries. But I think Mom would be very proud to know that after her loss, I have become a lot more optimistic, but not even optimistic, but a lot more of a stronger desire to be faithful in God. And I think I'm pretty comfortable to say I'm on that journey now. Like, I don't know if I'll ever belong to a church again per se, but who knows? Like, the point thing is now that I am actively reading it and wrestling with it, and it means a lot to me, and I'm enjoying the experience. And maybe I don't have that without the experience with Mom this summer.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add on there, like you said, because of the sensitive nature of it doing on the podcast, again, if anybody actually wants to hear the story off air, I'll probably also tell more detail. But the only thing I will add on there was it definitely was a spiritual related experience, especially for me going up to those 2 or 3 days that were in the situation with Mom where we knew she was going to pass away. It was just a matter of time. And there was just all sorts of things happen. I remember, your daughter was even reacting to things in the room that weren't there by the naked eye. And which kind of helped me validate more of the feelings I was having. But it just felt like, best way I could describe it, it felt like, all these loved ones around us that aren't here now are like rallying around Mom, almost preparing for that next step into the afterlife. And like, you couldn't have written a script better that from out of a movie is the way I would describe the ending. It was peaceful, for Mom. But again, something that we can discuss more later as well. But going on to the last question that we have, Robbie, of our 10, is if you could sit with Mom today, what would you want to tell her that you maybe never got to say?
I don't think I necessarily have anything that I never got to say, because earlier in the fall last year, around this time, do you remember when she was in the hospital for a few weeks and she ended up in Evansville? I told you one day I took my, I went up about 3 or 4 times that week. I took off of school the whole week. I went up there and I told you one day I sat with my school laptop in front of it, because a lot of the people that are in here know Mom knew that she had a significant hearing problem. Like, it almost debilitated her ability to have full conversations with people unless you're extremely loud. But I remember I told Mom, hey, let's have a conversation. And I'm going to have the font really big and I'm going to type every question I can think of. And me and Mom talked about her childhood, how she felt for her dad, what were her hopes and dreams, where does she want to travel to? Everything that I could ever want to say to Mom, I said to her there in the fall. I think for me, it's really just, I wish I could hear her voice again. I wish she could call me one more time after school and just kind of check on me again. Because like a lot of us do, I always was thinking in a rushed way, there's always another day. There's another evening, another day, another week. I can always call her and hear from her. And a lot of us never realize that reality and how true it is until it's too late. And I think that's something that has been echoed throughout history with storytelling about loss. I know, Ben, your story, you told me this the other day. And I think that what you about mom used to do with you and Ashley's house on the regular fits in this very well. But I also don't want to sabotage what you would say for this. But that's my answer for the last question of the night. I would love to know your answer. And just to remind you to share that story you share with me about what mom used to do, because it's not even a vocal thing. It was just an action she used to do that just shows what her legacy should really be like.
Yeah, there was actually a few comments, and I'll answer that as well, Robbie. I just wanted to reference a few comments from Facebook. Mary Louise Seal said, "When I remember your mom, she was a woman before her time. She saw and envisioned a way forward that she wanted people to get on board with." And that was back earlier when we were talking about how you could take mom in the sense of like being brash, and some people might see it as bitching, but it's more of like being passionate. Mary went on to say that, "I know that your mother was destined for heaven, and those moments were moments that you were probably the closest you were ever going to get heaven on earth." And you're absolutely right about that, Mary. It definitely was. I'd love to tell you that story in detail sometime. Diane, she made a comment. She said, "I'm so proud of you boys. Talking to each other and expressing your feelings also helps with grieving, and talk about your family member that you lost help out so much, and laughing at the good times and crying at the bad times. Your mother was a pure joy, and I did enjoy talking to her, but I enjoy talking to you. Boys become because your mother and your father lived through you." And Diane, like you're very much right there. And that's one of the things too, is like a lot of people that may not have known the full backstory there with mom, but I mean, she was literally on the verge of moving to Kentucky whenever this last episode basically took her out. I mean, she had all of her stuff packed up. It was something we had planned for, I want to say, at least a couple of months or a month and a half, that it was getting to that point where mom wasn't able to be on her own anymore. And we decided to give that a shot. So there was a big move plan there. But imagining if that would have happened, Robbie, was just thinking of, it would have been an adjustment for mom because she would have been farther home. I don't think she was particularly excited about the idea at first, but she accepted it and she embraced the idea. But I think she was prepared to make new friends down there. And I think, Letha's mom and her would have gotten extremely close. They would have been watching out for her, as well as I forget the couple's name now, but the couple that came to the funeral home that I think they didn't even get to actually meet mom, but they were prepared to like really welcome her to Kentucky. And they even came to the funeral home to pay their respects on mom. But I know I'm getting off topic. That's Malcolm's way, but I wanted to circle back to the question that we had on there is, if you could sit with mom today, what would you want to tell her that you maybe never got to say? And it wasn't really that I didn't get to tell her something. It's almost like I would like to tell her again to call me and talk her head off like she did many times. But it's almost like, it sounds really cliche, but it's like if you knew tomorrow was the last conversation you're going to have, I'd be telling mom to tell me all about her day and week and anything that she can talk about. And I think it was her way just, and it wasn't like super important stuff, really. It was just, she would tell me about every little commentary thing on her day. I wish I could go back now and listen to one of those conversations, like in real time with mom. But more than anything, like you referenced, Robbie, is like mom coming by to visit or just driving by the house. And that was something that came up when me and Robbie were talking a day or two ago, that I wish I could go back and tell mom that now I understand more why she did it. I can't remember how it came back up now, but I think I imagine it was not long after you, I'm probably going to get you emotional, but it's not long after you and Letha had Skylar Rain. And of course, I made the decision not to have children too, and Ashley and I were both, on the same page with that. But imagine if I had a child and that child grew up as well and you didn't get to see him all the time, what would you do as a parent? So it's like I put myself in mom's shoes, and then I understood more now why she would, call me and leave me a voicemail and say, "Yeah, I drove past the house today and I saw your truck out there." And I think it was more, everything in me tells me that the reason mom was doing things like that was because even though she knew I was going to work that day and we weren't going to get to talk, she might have been having a little bit harder of a difficult day herself, and it just gave her some level of comfort to be able to just drive past the house and see my truck out front. She was just happy to know that I was there. It's like it would bring her some level of comfort. And so I imagine in my position, if I had a son or a daughter, I would very much probably do the same thing. So it's like if I could go back now, I would tell mom to just continue driving past the house. If it makes you, if it brings you a level of comfort, please do so. So I kind of feel like I took those things for granted looking back on them now. So as the questionnaire side, Robbie closes up there. Of course, I'm going to share the poem here shortly, but thoughts around the questionnaire part. How did it make you feel?
I think it's great. Again, we knew that this was going to be like a therapeutic episode for us because you and I had not talked publicly about it other than just mentioning that we had hardship this summer and our mother passed away. But for me, the mom deserves a lot more than just even what one podcast episode could honor her with. But I still feel like the best way that me and you and the people that knew her could honor her is just in our actions, in our values going forward. I think that me and you are going to take that to heart greatly. And for me, I'm just grateful that me and you could even just sit here and do this because, not everybody can say that again. And the fact that me and you get to wake up every day and we have each of our family, we can talk to each other, we can plan to do things like this. I'm extremely grateful for that. And I know it's easy to kind of get into a pit of despair when you've gone through loss. Just remind yourself that you're not going through it alone. That's the best thing that you could remind you. Even if you have at least one friend or someone you could rely on, you got to be able to share your grief out. Bottling it up is just not going to be healthy for you or the people that you care a lot about. So, Ben, I'm very grateful for the questions. I thought you did an excellent job of creating them.
Thanks, brother. Just to go back to the comments section before I go to the next part being the poem is Brianna Bergman commented on and said, wonderful woman who is missed by so many, which is also Roxanne's daughter and Zach's sister. So, Brianna, it's good to see you. Appreciate the comment and the support tonight. The next part on there, which, again, I love the questionnaire part two, Robbie. I mean, I think it gave us a chance to share with each other's perspectives. A lot of heart-to-hearts we had, whether on the phone or driving back and forth from Owensboro whenever mom was in the hospital, both of us preparing for, knowing her passing was coming. But once mom had passed, of course, there was the next stage of going through the funeral stuff and having the actual showing and everything, which I actually, again, much like with John Madd, we had more control, I think, and we were older at the time when John Madd and mom passed away. With dad, I don't remember as much with the funeral more than I was not in the side of like organizing things and making it more of a celebration of life, even though it was. But we wanted John Matt and moms to be that way, and I felt like it really turned out that way. I mean, credit to Huber Funeral Home, Julie Huber, and the entire staff. They were wonderful to deal with. They loved mom to death as well, and they've always treated our family like family, so credit to them. When we got to the day of the funeral anyways, I had put together a poem that, again, much like this podcast, I was trying to think of a way to honor mom because there's a lot of funny moments in mom's life that we had, different sayings she had. Robbie talked about some examples earlier, like not being able to beat ourselves out of a wet paper bag or drive it park or paint it red, which are things that I incorporated into the poem. So the poem really encompasses mom very much to the T. Like it talks about her actions. It talks about her words. It talks about how she made people laugh, how she made people cry, how she warmed people's hearts. And to me, it's like the perfect way to summarize her life. It was the perfect way to celebrate her life. Now, I did get choked up towards the end during the funeral, so I'm hoping I don't hear. Again, if anybody wants to copy this, I might even share it again on Facebook after the show's over so you guys can see it. But the poem, again, is entitled Mama Malcolmson. So I'm going to go ahead and read this one. So again, Mama Malcolmson, the poem. She burned with grace, a steady flame, with laughter, love, and truth untamed. Her words were bold, her heart sincere. She held us close, she held us near. A mother's hands that brushed my hair, a chest I laid upon with care. Her heartbeat was my lullaby, a place where peace would never die. She showed up, always, every time, from schoolyard days to teenage climb. Win or lose on courts or fields, her cheering presence never yields. We lost to the girls in school one day. They dribbled past us every play. Mom chuckled with the teasing tag. You boys couldn't beat yourselves out of a wet paper bag. Her wit was love in full display. Behind the wheel, her timeless thread. Drive it, park it, or paint it red. A line we still can hear her shout. Her sass and joy, without a doubt. She kept her holidays aglow with ornaments, with twinkling snow. She taught us how to light a tree and how to live and simply be. She called each day just to hear what filled our world, what drew us near. And when her friends had needs to meet, she ran their errands, no retreat. She faced the grief no heart should bear, lost those she loved, but was still there. For me and Robbie, she held on, a steady light when hope was gone. She loved her town with all her heart, from quiet streets to every part. In dogwood days and local lore, she gave her time, then gave some more. She walked in truth, both brave and kind, with grace and humor intertwined. A steady hand, a heart so wide, forever standing by our side. Now she walks where stars align, with Dad, with John, and love divine. Still present, still our guiding light, in morning hush and softest night. So here's to Mom, who made things right, with fierce love, laughter, and boundless might. Forever ours, forever near. She's in the wind that says, I'm here. Again, that's the poem that I shared at Mom's funeral service. I do hope everybody appreciate it. I'm just glad that I made it through.
You made it. I was going to say, you made it through it, man.
I just had to make it through it.
Yeah.
But no, Robbie, I mean, I guess just a response from you, like whenever you hear that poem again, I'm sure it puts you right back in that situation, which you talked about earlier, kind of being back at funeral homes is a difficult thing for us to still process. But when you hear that poem, do you feel like it really speaks to Mom? Does it make you think of her very often?
Yeah, it does. And something to kind of add to what you said earlier, I saw a TikTok the other day about how sneaky grief can be. And it shows like this mom, I don't know if you saw the video yet either. I think it was a Hispanic mother that was like celebrating her birthday, and she was like laughing, and they were saying happy birthday to her, and she like cut the cake and she had it on a plate. And then all of a sudden it's like this memory of her mother or father hit her, and she just immediately started bawling. And I think that's how like sneaky it could be, is that it could hit you all at once. Anybody listening to this chat that's lost somebody close to you, it'll just pop up out of nowhere and rear its head and just shock you, because you can think, hey, I'm doing pretty well. And it might be because you're being really busy and you're keeping your mind very occupied, but are you really coping with it? And my best message for you and the others tonight is, I think the right way to cope with something is to go through it. You have to go through it. You have to talk about it, but you have to keep moving forward too, not to just talk to dwell in our sorrow and things like that, but to be active about it. Because as you said earlier in the show, Ben, Mom and our loved ones would never want us to live in a depressing way. Like, she's no longer suffering, so she would not want us to be living in suffering as well too. Because we're going to miss our loved ones, but just drowning in the sorrow is not what we're supposed to be. Ben, your poem is still emotional. I can keep from crying reading it. I did at the funeral as well, but I will admit to you, just like, I don't know if you remember, the night you sent me the poem, Letha was working. And it's one of those nights where I have Siler all the way till she goes to bed. Well, me and Siler were sitting on the floor, and I read it. I can't even hardly say it right now without crying. I read it out loud. I tried to read it out loud without ever reading it to Siler, and man, I can't even talk about it now without almost crying. I could not get through it because like I could hear my mom in it. So man, it was too much. I can't even talk about it right now. I can feel myself welling up. I'm just gonna move on to the closing script. Just gonna like right now, like reading out loud, as you know, Ben, reading out loud is way different than just reading it to yourself. You can hear the diction and the inflection and the tone in your voice, and nothing. I mean, you can't escape that kind of thing. I mean, it's something means a lot to you like this. It's powerful, and it's one of those poems that me and you could read it 20 years from now, and it's still gonna hit just as strongly. And man, it's just great. And what about you? Do you have any closing thoughts having to read it out loud for the first time since the middle of July?
Well, I think I remember you gave me the best advice going into is because there really was a lot of heart put into the poem, and I wanted, I'm trying to honor Mom's life. I didn't necessarily feel pressure, but I wanted it to make it meaningful. But I think remember the advice you gave me was not feeling like you got to rush through it, but just like really taking your time and reading. And that actually gave me enough balance to make it through it, even though there were some parts that are hard. And there's still parts as I'm reading it that will get me choked up in doing so. But I know with us closing thoughts here, which I'll share mine, but I want to give the audience a chance, whether it's YouTube or Facebook, to share what this episode meant to you, especially for those that, whether you knew Mom or you didn't know her as well. We're very curious to hear what you have to say now, or even after the show's over, what kind of impact this experience had on you. More than anything for me, I think it helped me process Mom's passing more. This is the first opportunity I've taken for myself since Mom's passing, besides this morning where I went to the cemetery for the first time since she was buried, and where I actually slowed down, like literally and figuratively, to really mourn and celebrate her life at the same time, because I feel like it's just been go, go, go. I did have a few comments I wanted to mention on Facebook. Mary mentioned, "I'll never forget it. All she ever wanted was the best for Candleton." My brother-in-law, Brian Shum, he commented and said, "Great poem. It really paints a picture of who she was to those of us who weren't around for all those years." And that's something too, Robbie, that makes me think the best example I can give is, I know this has helped me a lot now. I think the hard part, I don't know if you agree with this too, is when the holidays get here. Like I know my next one will be Thanksgiving, because for as long as I can know it now, since Ashley and I have been married, or it might have even started when we were still engaged, but Mom has always been a part of the Shum family Thanksgiving. This will be the first Thanksgiving this year where Mom's not physically there. I do think she'll be there in spirit. It'd be hard to imagine her not there at all. But I think the holidays is going to be, and I'm sure that's something that a lot of families have gone through whenever you've lost a parent or a sibling, that those first holidays can be a difficult time. But I don't want it to mean to overshadow them. I think it's going to make me appreciate those holidays more, but I'll do have a sense of mourning. It's kind of like I talked about earlier. I'll grieve and I'll mourn in my certain moments, but I'm also going to celebrate, because that's another Thanksgiving or another Christmas that it might be my last. It might be yours. It might be someone else we care or love about, and we need to make those count. So I guess more than anything, it just makes me be able to slow down, truly recognize all the good things that Mom did in her life, have some laughs on some, be able to read to that poem again. And it just makes me appreciate life going forward. It makes me appreciate the ability to be able to lay my head down to sleep tonight and get up to go to work tomorrow and try to make a difference, however it might be. But that's really all I got to wrap up the show. Robbie, did you have anything additional you wanted to add?
No. I mean, just to reiterate one more time, I'll just say that just remember that we all deal with grief differently, and I respect that. But like you said, Ben, whether it's the holidays or it's not, when we feel compelled to deal with grief alone, in especially a very social setting, we can often accidentally isolate those that are close to us that really want to help us. So just don't forget that part of being vulnerable to an extent is also just part of being a human being. I asked my students earlier this year in one of our first Socratic seminar philosophy discussions that we do, I always ask them, why must we suffer? And the easy answer is because we're human, and that life is not meant to be always happiness. There's plenty of suffering naturally. My main message is just don't feel like you're doing it alone, because you have me and Ben, you have your friends and family, people you're closer to. But hopefully, with us sharing our coping journey through this tonight, will hopefully give at least one person some help. I think based on the comments, Ben, I think it has resonated with at least some people on that level that may have needed to hear something like this.
And that's what leads me to is like, I really hope that somebody out there, maybe many people out there find that this helps them, maybe gives them a different perspective or helps them carry on for another day with a little bit of a different perspective. That's what it means the most to me. But there's a couple of comments I wanted to share before I completely wrap up the show, which is, again, my brother-in-law, Brian, commented and said she'll be missed for sure. Thanksgiving won't be the same, but she'll still be there with us. Roxanne Simpson, she commented and said, beautiful. You boys will always be like sons to me. I am here for you anytime. Love you both. Remember, everyone grieves differently. I still miss my mom and dad and sisters and brothers, and it's been a long time since they have been gone. Yes, those holidays are the worst. I will never forget your mom. She was so good to me. And then lastly, Mary commented and said, please know that so many of us in Cannleton want to be there for you. We love your family and we love you. And we love all you too, Mary. We really appreciate your guys' time tonight, because that's something else, like we mentioned earlier, about sacrifice, selflessness. In a way, you guys could be doing anything tonight. Or if you're listening to this podcast later on over Spotify or YouTube, that's you guys giving time to us to tell the story of mom. You're sacrificing a part of your time, which you could be doing anything with. And that means more to us than I can actually say. So again, not sure when the next podcast episode is going to be coming up. I talked to Robbie about, I think I'm going to do more of a sports theme one, because we do have, and this kind of ties into the end, because when mom passed away, obviously there's some level of finances there. Mom, she was very good with money and things like that. So she of course wanted her sons to be taken care of. But I remember specifically mom telling me that don't go spending all this on bills. Not talking about money after passing, but just like money in general. She'd be like, she didn't want us to just go and use it to pay off a credit card or something like that. She wanted us to go and do something fun. She wanted us to go and do something meaningful. So since you and I got more back into Indiana Hoosiers lately, I wanted to surprise Robbie, because Robbie's never been to an Indiana Hoosier football game. So, and I've been, fortunately, to several. And so I actually ended up I surprised him with some tickets to the Michigan State Indiana game coming up October 18th. It wasn't cheap, but to get like third row seats on the field, sold out, like it's going to be a memorable experience. Like we got a couple of days in Bloomington during that time, and I'll be thinking of mom through that experience, because it's a chance for Robbie and I, who live hours apart from each other, to be able to get together along with my brother-in-law and bond like we did in years past up in Bloomington, and him get to witness his first Indiana football game. So my plan is to have an episode on Chapters where we talk about leading up to that experience. And then I want to do an episode where we actually talk about that experience. So I plan on sharing, some photos and stuff like that. I think it's just going to be fun to capture that, because sports are sports. Yeah, but sports also have a way of bringing people together. Many different things. To me, it's no different than religion or things like that. It brings people together, and it's something that's always bonded us. So for those, again, that joined us tonight, we appreciate it. For those that have been supportive of our family, and especially mom, we love you very much, and we can't thank you enough. So again, please stay tuned for the next episode. This has been Chapters, Conversations That Matter.